All right, well, today we have two candidates running for council, the Democratic representatives for council, and I'd like to have an opportunity to introduce Donnelly and Nicole Gillespie. If you want to come on up and go over. Thank you.
Hey folks, how you doing? Beautiful day. I'm Nicole Gillespie. I'm Brian Donnelly. I'm running for Moorestown Council as a Democrat. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having us. I myself am a small business owner. I'm an attorney. Normally when I'm addressing the room, I'm the only attorney, but here we have multiple colleagues in the room that also do that as well. So I understand what it's like to be a small business owner. Okay? I know what it's like to rely on yourself to pay your mortgage and to feed your family, okay? I know what that burden is like, so I can empathize with you. And I appreciate your involvement here and coming to these meetings and being involved with the MBA, because it's an integral part of your success, which makes the town succeed, which makes everyone succeed. So thanks for your involvement. One of the reasons I'm here is to field questions, but in advance of those questions, I'd like to kind of point out one thing. I've seen the questions that were asked of the incumbents that people were running against, and all of them stem from a fundamental issue, okay? There is a fundamental lack of transparency going on in Moorestown that we need to address. There's a fundamental lack of proactive engagement, and there's a fundamental lack of input with the committee system and working with the committees to get you what you need as MBA members of business owners. The last time our town had its master plan updated, people were still using BlackBerries, okay?
I love the BlackBerry.
Much easier than the iPhone, which the last time the Moorestown had updated its master plan was not really invented yet. People that will be deploying in our military to go overseas this year were in 3rd grade the last time your town updated its master plan. You can't go anywhere as a 25-year veteran of the military. I've worked at the highest levels of our government, all the way up to a Pentagon-shaped building called the Pentagon. You can't know where you're going unless you have a plan. It should be a pretty fundamental, easy thing for business owners to recognize. It's something that is sorely lacking in our town council. So what we're going to address, and I don't want to steal all the thunder, I want Nicole to speak, but our biggest push is transparency, 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 proactivity, proactivity, proactivity. We will be proactive and not reactive, which is what you're dealing with now, okay? When you have issues, like these are the questions that were asked previously. Why is the master plan closed to discussion and input? When will we have water to expand our business? If you're asking those questions, you have a fundamental problem with planning in your town. If you're asking where's our water coming from in this town. So I want to thank you all for coming. I welcome your questions. And I want to turn it over to Nicole so I don't steal all your time.
Thank you. So I am not Brian Donnelly. I'm Nicole Gillespie. We are fairly easy to tell apart once you get to know us. And I have gotten the pleasure, or had the pleasure, of getting to know many of you through MBA. I've been a member for, I don't know, a year or two now, and Rotary and other things. So I see many familiar faces. I am currently the CEO of the Knowles Teacher Initiative, which is a nonprofit here in Moorestown that supports high school math and science teachers. Mostly we do this work nationally, but we have just started doing work in local schools, including the Moorestown schools. So, like Brian said, like many of you, I am also I don't own the business, but I am the leader of our nonprofit. Our property over on North Church Street, we've been there since 2005. We took over a derelict property. Those of you who have been around for a long time may remember it was a Scott fertilizer lab. So I share your pain at what you go through to start a new business in this town. We had a hard time ourselves. We went through lots of stuff with contamination in the ground, permits. We have a very expensive parking lot that we don't need. So we've been through that. I wasn't CEO at the time, but I hear the same echoes that this is still a problem in this town. Being part of the MBA, I've been hearing lots about other things that business owners struggle with. I've talked to lots of folks in our town and other towns who really want to start a business here, but there's so many barriers to doing that. And both Brian and I agree that businesses and residents, we're all neighbors, and we all need to work together. If we can attract more businesses to town, make it easier, make it look like this is the place you want to be. You can do business here and you can be successful. That's good for all of us. And we don't see our elected leadership doing enough to make that happen. I'm sure you all are aware there's some friction between the town and the MBA. It's inconceivable to me that the town is at loggerheads with a volunteer group of business owners that are trying to make Moorestown better. So one of our commitments is we got to fix that. We got to learn how to work together. Like Brian said, we want to be proactive. We want to figure out what do we do to make it easier to attract businesses in town and help them get through the hurdles that they have to get through. Brian mentioned one of our big issues is transparency, and that covers all kinds of issues in this town. Lots of residents are struggling with that as well. One of our other big issues that we're concerned about is, which transparency plays in there as well, is the financial state of the town. So we are nearly $60 million in debt in Moorestown. Not a lot of people are paying attention to that. This concerns us. We think we need to be having community conversations about where is this town going? What kinds of things are we taking on debt for? Is there a vision? So like Brian said, our master plan hasn't been updated in a decade. That process has started, but the public is not involved. The business community is not involved. So we are committed to changing that. There's a tremendous pool of talent in this town. In addition to the committees, the township committees, which have been somewhat hamstrung, I would say, recently. Other volunteer groups like NBA, like STEM, are feeling frustrated. There's so many people in this town who have so much to give and want to give to make this town better. What we want to do is find a way to work with that. We think that unless we're doing that, town will never be better than the 5 people on council, no matter who they are. And we don't think we're good enough to have all the answers. We know we're not. So one of the things we're committed to is being able to work with residents and businesses and volunteer groups to move things forward. So thank you.
What I'd like to do is I'd like to go around the room. Each table, they should have a captain, whether it's a board member or someone I asked to be the captain, to ask a question either off the list that was presented to you. Those are questions that were asked by other members, or ask your own question, all right? But George, I'm going to start with you since you're eating. And, let me go over here. All right, how's that?
We didn't really get a huge chance to discuss it, but playing on what you just talked about, I'm fairly impressed with those 2 focus points. Turning that into making things easier, how do you translate the transparency and the ease into, we'll start at the top with the permit process and trying to get that under control. I know a lot of people have had problems opening businesses, cost lots of extra money, time. Do you have any ideas on how to start addressing that?
Well, yeah, personally, and I think, again, master plan is a big problem we have because they're so behind on being able to develop a plan that they can't get to the permits. Kind of hard to do spot check permits all over the place when you don't know where you're going, right? Kind of hard to do variance planning if you don't know where everything's going to be. So getting your master plan down is a big part of it. Another part of it is ensuring that the people appointed to the boards are doing their job and doing it quickly and effectively. And if they're not addressing it, the question is why? And if you're not addressing it, and I'm the one appointing you, then you can beat it and I'll find someone else that can address it, okay? If it's a function of not having enough support, which we don't hear, this goes to the transparency issue, right? We never get any feedback. It's always just, we're handling it. Stay out of it. Let us know. and you get support. Because I can tell you, it's not just the business owner, it's the residents, because it all trickles downhill. So we have to be proactive and informative, okay? Information is not the enemy, and information is your friend. Utilize it. And that's how I would approach it.
So I would just add to that, in addition to, I think that we've heard, Tony spoke to, what was that, August?
Yeah, Tony's episode.
Yeah, and he acknowledges that the process isn't working well, it needs to be fixed. I don't know enough about that process to say, here's the tweaks we make, but it needs a close look. In addition, I think that we were just having conversations with Noam about when he went through this permitting process, and he felt like he knew some stuff ahead of time and was able to get ahead of things. I think if the town could do a lot better about saying, if you want to start a new business here, here's the steps you should go through, here's the forms. I did some research, and Collingswood actually has a lovely website where it's laid out, you know, we have to talk to, what you have to do. Moorestown, ironically, if you go to their website, you come to, the only thing you get is a link to the NBA. Which I'm glad but it's really opaque. Like if you just want to get started, it's really hard to know what to do. So I think those are some fairly easy things that we could do pretty soon to make things a little bit smoother. And for sure, you got to figure it out as you go. But our website is 4 years old. We paid for an upgrade at the 4-year point. I don't know if it's happening or not. I don't know if you've been on our website lately, but it needs an upgrade. I mean, just trying to figure out what day your recycling gets picked up if there's a holiday. Yeah. Not easy, right? So it needs some work. So I just think there's some things like that that could be done that are fairly simple that could help the process and maybe help shine some light on what else needs to be done to make better.
You know, to answer your point, though, I think there's a process issue, but it also seems to be a mindset issue. And the case in point is one of our members had reached out to me, and they had dealt with someone in town, and I'm going to keep names out of it, and basically the answer was no right from the start, and they were told they had to move their business to get what they needed. It wasn't much of an issue from my point of view. So I reached out to Tony Zappizzotti, and I said, Tony, is this cut and dry, or is there something we can do here? And Tony worked with the business owner, was able to find the common ground to make sure it followed in the footsteps of the ordinance, and the business was able to get what they needed. They could stay. They're very happy. So to me, it's rather than saying no, we're anti-business, there is a mindset, how do we make it work within the guidelines in town? So again, that was one member that I had personally reached out to me to see how I can help. So no, thank you. So can we, Russ, are you the captain of the table there? You have a question?
It seems I am. I'll ask the same question that I asked a month ago. What do you think are the 2 or 3 sort of most pressing issues? I mean, if you join council, the 2 or 3 major things that you think need to be dealt with during the course of your term.
Okay, I'll start. So I think number 1 is transparency. So it's communication at all levels. Council has acknowledged this, and about a year or so ago, they hired a PR firm. Nothing really gotten better, but I think it takes some creative thinking about how does council communicate proactively across the town. So I've seen interesting examples. Glassboro has a town app, right? And they do a pretty good job about using that to keep people informed. So that's one of our biggest ones, is the communication and the transparency. And I'll let Brian go with number 2.
Yeah, it's the same. It's economic transparency, fiscal responsibility, and again, proactivity, okay? There's no plan. We can't, and I hate to keep rehashing the same issue, but if you think about it as a business person, you don't know where you're going unless you have a business plan. So it's the same answer over and over again. You have to have a plan to know where you're going to be proactive, okay? Proactivity means you have a plan, everyone's on the same page. That means you can be transparent with everyone. It means you're not defensive. It means you're not playing whack-a-mole constantly, so people are constantly badgering you, and then you feel like you're being badgered, and you get defensive. It's just very simple, and it's engaging people and acknowledging that the committee system, which is totally broken, okay, frankly, I hate to be partisan on this subject, but that's my job here, that's what I'm doing. Our committee system is utterly broken. A lot of the issues that you have are because there's committees that are not filled. There's the committee, people have volunteered for committees and not gotten response and been pushed off, because the committee system, unfortunately, is used as political leverage to get jobs done. And if you're not in the know there, their committee's not treated as a working arm of the government. It is looked at as just a roadblock, which has to stop. We can't keep going along this path. And that's the answer. So transparency, 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 integrity, and respect, and which will create a long-term plan for this town.
Go over this here. Joe?
Good afternoon. Hey, thanks for being here today, and thanks for wanting to contribute your time and effort to serve in the community. It's really appreciated. So a couple things. As a certified financial planner and an RIA fiduciary, I certainly understand and I'm behind you about the importance of a plan. Absolutely no doubt about it. But more important than that is the execution and the monitoring. So there are two things that I'm really curious, and we're really curious about for the execution, how you would go about doing it. So the transparency, number one, that you mentioned the importance of, which everyone agrees. How is that going to happen, especially in lieu of the legal aspects that are out there and how people are fighting with, using the law to try to defend not being transparent in many ways. And then also, too, the other thing is the issue with money. As a money guy, I look at, we're spending a lot of money, and there's a lot of people who want more money spent. What is the process that you would go through in prioritizing? What really is the most important? What's going to influence you to prioritize where the dollars should be spent?
Yep.
I'll start with, one of the things that we've committed to in terms of the money is that every January at the reorganization meeting, council votes on township professionals. So that's a pretty good chunk of money. I think if you take away the salaries and benefits for township employees, what we pay our professionals is a good chunk of our budget. Best practices recommend that you send those out to get bids every 2 years to make sure you're getting the best value for township dollars. Our current council has not sought competitive bids in over 5 years. It'll be 6 in January. So that's an awful lot of money that's going out the door that's being rubber stamped. I just saw some stuff come through yesterday, and it's not stuck in my head, but our township engineer has been raising their rates significantly every year. And maybe they need to, I don't know, maybe that is the given, the going rate, but we don't know because we don't go out for bids. So that's one answer that we would do immediately, is take a good hard look at township professionals and commit to seeking competitive bids on those every year. In terms of how the rest of the budget goes, this is something that we get into if we get elected. The budget, even though it would be for calendar year 19, that gets done sometime starting in the spring. So digging into those, and we both, I think, need to have a lot to learn about where is the money being spent. It's really hard to find that information right now as a citizen out there looking for it. So that's one answer.
Yeah, and again, priorities is the transparency issue, but infrastructure, water, and execution of the committee system as an integral part of the community. There's all of this talent, this wealth of talent, and labor, free labor, that's willing to step up for free if you just engage them in the process. That's part of the execution. When you can engage your committees to stand up. Imagine if you may have experienced it. The NBA comes and says, hey, we have a great idea. We're willing to volunteer. We want this, 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 and this done. And all you get is the Heisman.
That was the food truck.
Right. The food truck. It's like, it blows everything up. If the knee-jerk reaction is, why am I even bothering to volunteer? I'm looked at not as a helping person, but as an impediment to the process. It should be embraced. It should be thanked. It should be publicly thanked. Thank you for your service, right? And that is the way to execute on the process, okay? And again, the transparency piece and the fiscal responsibility piece.
Brian, to your point, as the president, I go around and talk to the folks in the NBA, that level of frustration is enormous, that people are willing to give their expertise for free, and then it goes nowhere. And it seems like members of both parties are frustrated, like, why are we not doing anything with it? And I haven't gotten an answer from anyone to date why we're not doing something with it. And it doesn't seem to be a party issue because it's members from both parties are frustrated. So again, I'm looking for an answer as well.
Yeah. So I would just want to add in and say that in terms of the committees, I've heard council over and over again say, The role of committees is to serve at the pleasure of council. We'll let you know when we need to. And that is a choice our current council has made. There's nothing binding them to that. And I can say that is not our attitude. Our attitude is, the committees are full of not just volunteers, but experts. And we need to rely on them as a think tank for the town to move us forward. So that's our campaign slogan, is Moorestown Forward. And we mean that. And we don't think we can do this by ourselves. So one of our goals is re-empower those committees, rebuild relationships with volunteer groups like STEM, like MBA, because that's where the talent is in this town. And we don't think we can do it by ourselves.
Thank you. Any questions on this case?
My name is George Stale, and I wanted to know a two-part question regarding to master planning. Have either one of you ever professionally or as a volunteer directed or led a strategic or master plan? And second, what do you foresee as being the key components of pulling off from a macro perspective, managing and executing a master planning process?
I'll just say, so I have engaged in some strategic planning on a much smaller scale with the nonprofit that I run. And I think some of the key things that we've learned is, A, getting lots of stakeholder input into the master plan, which is not yet happening with this review. B is setting up some agreed upon milestones or markers. Like how do we know if we are actually making progress towards this plan? I won't say I've done it for a town before, but the process is not that different. And if those milestones are in place, I don't know what they are. And I know that the public hasn't been involved yet in this current revision. So that's the answer to the first question.
Yeah, I haven't this is the first time both of us are running for a position. So, unlike people we're running against, we don't have a history of politicking. All we want to do is make the town better. I've worked at the highest levels of our government planning. I'm a graduate of the Command and General Staff College of the U.S. Army. I'm a field grade officer in the U.S. Army, 25-year veteran. I clerked for the judge of the land use and general equity judge in Gloucester and environmental judge in Gloucester County with Tony Zapso. So I've known Tony for a very long time. The plan itself is actually generated not by council, but by the planner. So part of it, again, is being on top of them to come up with the plan. Part of being an attorney is realizing that you're not the expert in everything, okay? I'm not an expert, but I have the humility to know that and to ask the experts questions, right? Ask the experts about the 10-year plan and what we should be doing. Ask the experts about engaging other experts about Main Street and what we're going to do about it. That's what I want to do. So I don't have direct experience, but I have on the actual master plan piece. But I can get up to speed real quick because I've done it everywhere else in the course of my career.
Here. Andrew, your table, please. Andrew.
I'll answer that. Okay. We had a good discussion.
Is it a estate planning question?
Yes, we got it. As you look up and down Main Street, and Stephen mentioned this earlier, there's a lot of the same type of establishments. What's your plan to kind of attract retailers and maybe a more diverse group of retailers to the town?
One thing again, I'm not the expert. I don't have an MPA, okay? I'm not a master of public administration. I want to retain the experts. I want to find the experts that Colin would retain and retain them and tell me what the plan is, okay? And then go forward with that 5-year plan. Why don't we have a 5-year plan for Main Street? That's where you start. With respect to, on the ground level that I can respond to is we have to start enforcing these vacant properties on Main Street. And I can realize maybe some people even in the room are the owners of those properties, I don't know, but a rising tide lifts all ships, as we say in the military, right? If you get rid of vacant properties and people see that there's a business here and a business here, then it's going to have a domino effect on people wanting to open up businesses in town, which includes diversity. Because the natural business process is you're not going to have the same store generally next to the same store. But that's a direct answer to the question we will start doing when we're elected. On a 10,000 foot level, we have to engage experts to come up with a 5-year plan for Main Street.
Well, Brian, this organization is the experts in business.
So one of the things we've talked about a lot, and this is not an original idea to us because it's other campaigns have run on this on both sides, is the idea that Moorestown needs a business manager. Somebody who is proactively looking for what does the community want on Main Street? Like, I think we're pretty good at nail salons. Maybe not, I don't know. But you know, what do we need? People were so happy when that Mexican restaurant came in, almost as happy as they were walking up and down Main Street with their beer. I'm sorry. So there's, you know, we've been all over town talking to people, and I have not heard anybody say, yeah, leave Moorestown or Main Street alone, it's good. People are like, we love our Main Street. Like, this is the heart of our town, and we'd like to see this there, and I want to go hang out there with my kids, and I want to bring my guests down there. So it's not going to happen accidentally. We're just sort of sitting back hoping for the best. I used to live over in Collingswood 15 years ago, and it's changed a lot. That did not happen by accident. They worked hard to change it. So one of the things, if we can get a business manager, and this is, I think, is a prime place to look for shared services. We don't need a full-time business manager, I don't think. But other towns have them. Other towns are doing a good job. We could look into some shared services and get somebody whose job is to think about what would really thrive on Main Street. How do we help them want to come here? How do we make it easy and pave the way for them so that setting up a business is a pleasure here? I met a woman in Haddonfield. She's got this great dress shop, and we got to chatting. She said, oh, I want Moorestown to be the next place I go. That's the next place, obvious place for my business. And she said, but I'm so daunted because I can't figure out what to do in Moorestown. Haddonfield rolled out the red carpet, you know, it's up on the website, they really welcomed me, and I feel really daunted, but Moorestown's the next best where I want to be. So I was like, we gotta fix that, right? We gotta make it so that when somebody's that excited to come here, we're right there with them, and we're paving the way for them. So I think a business manager is one key thing we would look at very soon and trying to get that in place.
It's an interesting point because when the Delaware Valley Planning Commission came done, one of the things she had talked about, it was Karen mentions that you have to have the community leaders have to buy into it because you can have this plan all you want, but if you're going to run into walls to say, well, thank you, we'll just kind of like, we'll put it out to, you know, in circular file and so on. So I think that it's interesting when we had it that there was no interest in the township about what the Delaware Valley Planning Commission had talked about, even though they had advised many of the more prosperous or promising towns. And I know they did Haddonfield, Collingswood, Chestnut Hill, I think there's 70. You'll know more about it than I do, so please, but there's just no interest in what would apply to Moorestown. You don't have to take everything they're talking about, but when they describe their town, we're doing many things wrong. You know, about having first floor offices and too many gaps so that we don't have the foot traffic. So it's this endless cycle to the bottom here where we don't have enough foot traffic. So then retail establishments can't stay open because they can't spend a day here. So I don't know if you'd be open to meeting with them because I thought they had some great ideas where in the past it doesn't seem like it went anywhere. So.
I was at that meeting, and one of the things that stuck in my head was you need to have community discussions about what you want your town to look like. And I feel like this is a thing that's missing. Like, we don't have town hall type meetings. You can go to council, you can try and wedge yourself into the half hour in the beginning, maybe you'll get lucky and get to speak in the end, but it's not enough time for the community to really have a discussion about what we want. So there was a meeting a couple of weeks ago about the Linola grant. That's the first one I've ever seen in this town. Maybe there's been others. But I thought, why aren't we doing this more regularly to talk about, like, hey, let's just have a community discussion on what do we want for Main Street? Let's just hear what people have to say. I would like to see more discussions about what we want to see in Linola. The grant, great, Linola needs some love. I'm happy to see that that's going to happen, but every resident that got up to speak said, wait, we got bigger problems here. And the fancy crosswalks and the flowering trees are not going to solve our concerns. Traffic is a big one. I don't believe that repainting the lines is going to solve the traffic traffic problem in Little. But we're not having those kinds of discussions and hearing from residents about what's really going on for the people who live there and work there every day.
Does anyone have a question I want to ask them?
Just for complete transparency, Manny did approach me at the end of last month's meeting, and he has reached out to Karen to learn more about the DRVPC. So just so that everyone.
3 weeks before the election.
Yeah, when it was presented, EDAC had offered, they asked if they were invited to come. And I said, absolutely. I flew back in a red eye from Vegas to attend the meeting. And I got, they told me that someone said they weren't available, had lunches and so on, but no follow-up, no questions about what took place. Can you send a video? So it was lack of interest from EDAC. And Manny did bring it up to me on Autumn and Moorestown that he'd like to get more involved with it. So, just consistent with what you're doing. So, no, please.
One quick question and then a follow-up. You guys are running for 2 seats on a 5-seat.
Right.
Are the other 3 seats not up for election at this?
Not this, they'll be up in 2020.
There'll be 3 people controlling.
So I don't know much about, I'm only in town 3 years, but what are your relationships with those 3 folks, and do you think you'll be able to work with them, and what, because what I hear through the grapevine, pardon me, is that it's a fairly controlling group, and this is the way we do things, and we've been doing it this way a long time, and we're not going to change that. You hear that in the business world too. Why are you doing it? Oh, we've always done it that way. So how are you going to affect change with 3 folks who probably kind of like the way they're doing it? And then a quick add-on to that. Are the positions of people who work in township tenured? So those are my 2 together.
Let me answer your first question and say we have a great relationship with one of the people on council. So the way it goes, it's a 5-person council, and whatever party has 3 has control. So there's 4 Republicans, 1 Democrat right now. One of the other things we are deeply committed to is it's deeply divided, it's deeply partisan for no real reason that I can see. And it gets somewhere between unpleasant and nasty on a regular basis. Lisa doesn't get the information she needs. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So that's one thing we are committed to changing. If we win, we'll have a majority on council, and we are committed to working with everybody who's up there, and because we need as many people as we can working to make the town better. So that is one commitment we have made. I don't know. This town has had a Democratic mayor for 4 years in its entire history. So this could be a big change coming up. And I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question about township employees. There's civil service, and
I've just heard in some towns that they once they're in, they're tenured, and that causes change issues too, right? Because if your job is guaranteed for your life, you're not terribly incented to change anything.
I do know that council is only responsible for the manager, and everybody else
Is that the manager's
is the manager's
discretion?
responsibility.
Notwithstanding, boss, can I call you? Noam was my first boss. I worked for Noam at CompUSA in 1996. I made $6 an hour, and he made a lot more. And I'll speed it up, I know it, but the committees and the position, like board positions, land use board, et cetera, can be utilized once you have control. So yeah, like a sitting police chief or a fire chief, no, I mean, that's a whole different kettle here right there. But yes, committees, boards, which drive the town forward, yes, we absolutely.
For years, we've been hearing about working on Main Street, improving Main Street, and so on. And some would say it should be instead of the Moorestown Business Association, it should be the Main Street Business Association. But to me, it looks like building a financial plan. If Main Street isn't solid and prosperous and vibrant, how do you build the other business corridors? And yet we seem not to get anywhere. We can't even get basic cleaning. The roads aren't cleaned, cars aren't removed, you got leaves going underneath, sidewalks, buildings aren't maintained, stores are vacant. I don't understand why we are neglecting this gem of ours. What's your thoughts and what's your position on truly how we're going to fix Main Street besides, we talked about the manager, but we're not even doing basics, having, trash removed and, stuff like that. So what are your thoughts, please?
well, and if I might add on it, if I may pour gasoline on that fire, unlike towns we're talking about, Haddonfield, Collingswood, Main Street towns, right? Riverton to an extent, but we're blessed. We have all of this commercial rateable, tax attorney, rateable taxes all over the place, and then we have this gem in the middle of town. We don't rely solely on this Main Street like Haddonfield does, mainly on it like Collingswood does. We have nothing to gain, or everything to gain, pardon me, than to just build this up into a gem Main Street, because we already have all these other properties we leverage for our taxes. So why isn't it being done? Is my answer. But I would, again, 5-year plan, manager, take a look at the committees. There's a lot of committees that are willing to go and do the things we're talking about. Parents committee, planting flowers, cleaning up.
They have this plan that was approved, and I mean, it's relatively simple. It's been over 2 years now that or at least 2 years, where we haven't gotten anywhere. And a lot of the people that were members were very frustrated about, including Gina. She keeps going, asking about funding, and like Gina Ziegel, who's out there, and I mean, she does a lot of the volunteer work, and just incredibly frustrated with it. So, yeah, I don't have any answers, and I've never gotten one, why we just take it for granted.
Yeah, I will say, this is probably maybe a small thing, but I think we have some ordinances on the books that have no teeth, that aren't being paid attention to. So Annette just wrote a letter in the paper and pointed out that we have this, we handle vacant residencies different than we do vacant commercial properties. So the new plan in town is if you have a vacant neglected residence, you're going to go on this list of shame. Maybe that'll work. But why, what's going on with commercial properties? How is it worthwhile for these business owners to leave their properties open and get no rent for years at a time? What's going on there? Why is that a worthwhile thing to be doing? So I think we need to be looking at what systems are set up in place to make that a more attractive thing for a business owner than to lower your rent by $1,000. There's also some things around who's responsible for the owners, for renters, or whatever, for maintaining, the patches of weeds around the trees. So I think there's little things that we can start that are in place that we just ignore. That would be not that hard to start saying, like, okay, we're going to hold you to this, and we want to give you incentives. We want to encourage you to do this. I don't want to start with we're going to penalize you, but there's no teeth to these, so people are ignoring them.
You had a question?
No, I didn't have a question. I was just saying to Nicole, it's when you win, not if you win.
Yeah.
Get your non-partisan, please.
I said when we win.
Okay, thank you. If you don't have a question, I want to ask about EDAC, since obviously I'm the point person. It's very, I think our new town manager, Mr. Neff, had mentioned it was very contentious. To me, I try to report out what's going on. EDAC goes from being an advisory group to all of a sudden they're trying to recreate being their own little mini MBA. It looks like the behavior is questionable. What's your position on what they're doing and other committees that decide to do whatever they feel like it? I mean, I've just never seen a committee behave that way, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on here.
I think that's a fundamental lack of experience by the people that are running the show, okay? You have to be able to get in there and dive in the weeds with these committees as a leader and go, whoa, let's all sit down. We're all on the same team here. We're all in Moorestown, right? We're all neighbors. We shouldn't be opposed to one another. Let's have a vetting of our views, and let's, again, transparency, proactivity, discussion. Why are we at arm's length? What's the issue? What's the concern? And why is that? That's what you have to do. One committee can't be usurping another committee, whatever it is. That's my position on it. So it's a fundamental lack of inexperience in leadership roles. That to know, this is what you do. And I'm not talking about, I run a little business. I'm talking about C corporation level leadership roles where you go, okay, well, we lead people, teams of people. This is what we do for a living. There's nothing overly complicated about this to people that do it for a living full time. Okay, folks, I hate to say it like that, but this is what we do. We're just taking a left seat, right seat, as we'd say in the military. That's my answer. You have to, as a leader, get in and put your hands in the dough and say, what are the problems here, folks? Let's talk. Not ignore it, not put your head in the sand, Not to say you're ignored. I don't care about your input. When I want your opinion, I'll come and get it, which is what's happening.
Yeah, although I will say that there's a marked difference between how the majority of the committees are treated versus EDAC. So, EDAC took on this role, which is, arguably not their role to take on. In the process, NBA had been working on this for a while. The thing about, I won't claim to know all the details, but the permitting for the food trucks, how that was handled, how it got sort of, went through the process, it got fast-tracked when EDAC took over. There's some real questionable things, I think, going on there. But I think the bigger issue is we have this vibrant NBA in town who's been very successful at these kind of events and bringing new things to Moorestown. And to shut them out, it makes no sense. I mean, the business community is such an integral part of this town. If we can't, we gotta figure out how to work together. And that has to be council, it's gotta be EDAC, it needs to be Public Works. So I think one of the things we need to be talking about is how do we get the township manager and EDAC and meeting on a regular basis so everybody's on the same page. So people are aware of here's the issues, here's the problems. These things don't seem that hard to do, and I don't know why, there's all these rifts among these different
I can tell you, Autumn in Moorestown is the first time in a while that I felt like everyone in town was working together to have a successful event. You saw the whole community. It was Public Works, the police, the fire. Council had to approve it. It was a total team effort to at least try something new and look at the outcome of it. It was a wonderful event. And why not learn from it and let us do some other things that can enhance the community? We have time for one last question. Anybody that hasn't raised a question yet? Anything on the, we're good? All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.